G'day guys, Braden from Red's Cold Blooded Critters, back again for episode 2. Alright, so if you've watched the first one, as you would have seen, we built the racks, we built 2 of our enclosures in preparation for the 2 new ones that will be coming the exact same size and that they're going to go straight on top. And basically we just put the foundation of the room completed before we go through and start filling it up with the enclosures and so forth. Just got a little of a list here to cover off on this intro, otherwise I'll forget it all. First and foremost, like I just said before, I've got 2 more of these enclosures coming that are going to stack on top. Unfortunately, there's a little bit of prep work that's got to go into these enclosures before you can stack stuff on top of them. Whilst they are good enclosures, they're not overly structurally sound. Okay, the fittings and that sort of stuff is quite similar to that of a flat pack that you'll get from IKEA. Whilst it does get the enclosures together, it doesn't create a complete seal. Now what ends up happening is bits of your sand and so forth will fall out through them cracks. I'm going to have misting systems inside these enclosures, so water and stuff, if that gets into the exposed melamine, it causes it to swell and damage, and these enclosures cost enough. I don't want to have to go buying any more. So we've got to seal up the corners and all the edges on the inside of the enclosure, which you'll see me do. After this, we've got to pre-drill and put some Tek screws into the wood itself and just fix it and tighten it up a bit more. Just adding that little bit of structural integrity before you go plonking a whole bunch of weight on top. So once they're fully set up, with all the bedding, the wood, the lights, all that sort of jazz, they are quite heavy. And over time, whilst it might be okay to start with, over time eventually you'll find that it might start to break down, and again, I don't want that, I don't need that, so I don't want that for the animals. If anything was to happen to them, I'd hate for them to get crushed and so forth. So we've got to do a little bit of stuff like that. There's some aftermarket sort of lights that we've got here from Bunnings that we're going to be installing in there. The control from your phone, the colours and the temperature of the light, all that sort of stuff is all done from your phone. So the holes that come in top of the enclosure are a little bit too small, so we're going to drill them out a little bit. And then we've got to place some, which I will show you, but we've got to place some wood just on top of these enclosures and that sort of stuff. It's kind of hard to explain, you'll just have to see it. And that'll just mean that when I put these enclosures in on the top, they won't slide around. But I'll show you a little bit more about that before I do it. Firstly, before we go straight into that, I've got a clip, a little bit of a time lapse that I've filmed just before filming this. At the local park, a big tree come down. Before council come along and cleaned it up, I was able to come and salvage some of the branches off it. This is excellent for me because a lot of the pet shops and that will sell you wood and that sort of stuff. However, I can't justify spending up to $200-300 on pieces of wood to go in these enclosures that don't quite look as natural as something that you would get from the bush. But before you can go ahead and throw these bits of wood straight in there that you've collected, you need to clean them and treat them and that sort of stuff first. So I'll talk a little bit more about that in a second, just over the time-lapsing clip. Once that's done, by the end of this episode, I'm hoping that the 2 new enclosures will be in, they'll be set up, ready to go, it'll all be happening. So then by the 3rd episode, or next episode, you'll start to see me filling up these racks with the enclosures, and that'll be exciting. We'll start with 1 rack, fill it all the way up, and then we'll get over to the next one and start filling it up. Once all the enclosures or the racks are filled up with their enclosures, we'll then start on the backgrounds. Some of these backgrounds, like I said, will have 3D backgrounds, in which case I'll show you and demonstrate to you how I build them backgrounds. There's a little bit of a process and it is a bit time consuming, but you can be super creative with it, and just by referencing images online, you can pretty much create anything as realistic as you put the effort in. So the more time and effort you put into it, the better it's going to turn out. And then some of these enclosures are just going to have photo printed backgrounds. It'll be easier that way. Some of them will look a little bit more natural. Some of the enclosures, like the frilly enclosure that we'll be setting up, generally speaking, some of the areas in which you would find frillneck lizards, they don't necessarily always have big rocky escarpments. It might be more sort of openy grass plains and just trees and that sort of stuff. So we're going to be able to compensate for that and keep it looking as natural as possible, because that's the idea here, is got to look as sort of as real as possible and yeah, just sort of mimicking exactly where they would come from in the bush. So stay tuned, we'll get stuck into that. We'll start with this time lapse of me cleaning up the wood, and I just explained to you a little bit of a process of what I'm doing and how I'm doing it, why I'm doing it, and yeah, stick around. Righto guys, as you would see here, I've got my wood laid out on the lawn, the timber that I collected from the park. I'm just giving each of them a really extensive wipe over. The solution I'm using is a 1 part bleach to 2 parts water. It's basically diluted down, clean the wood extensively. It just helps get rid of any sort of bugs, insects, or anything like that. The main concern, obviously, in my area, we've got a lot of Bora Bora or wood grub, so this just helps eliminate that sort of the larvae nice and early and keeps the wood protected from them bugs. So just quickly in this clip here, as you'll see, I'm just cutting out some plyboard just into some nice rectangular shapes to sort of fit the base of the enclosures. The idea behind this is to give something sturdy for the branches to basically screw onto to assist them sitting upright. If it is a bit wobbly, that's okay, because you are going to put a lot of bedding over the top of it and it should weigh them down. This was definitely a 2-person job for me, so my brother come and give me a hand, thankfully. We were able to knock up about 6 of them in no time whatsoever, so yeah, it was a pretty quick job. Righto guys, as you would have seen from the intro and from what I said, we have to make a few alterations, modifications to the top of this enclosure to suit having another enclosure stacked on top and the lights that I want to put into it. So what I've got here is just it's a 95mm round circular saw bit. You just attach it, obviously put it into your drill, and we need to drill out some of the holes that have already been pre-drilled in the top of the enclosure. Now the reason for that is because the lights that I've bought, these lights here, I've seen them from a video from Beach's Scaly Beast. He uses the same one. You can change the lights, you can change the color, you can change the dimming, the timing, everything from it. So in order to get them to fit in here, we just have to make the holes a little bit bigger. So I've got that there. The second thing is we've also got these blocks of timber. The idea behind these blocks of timber is I've just got to drill them and attach them to the side of the enclosure. Now the reason for that is because, as you can see from the lip on top of the enclosure here, there's not a lot of room for the other enclosures to sit on top. So meaning there's not a lot of room for sliding or anything like that, or otherwise the enclosures, it's very unstable. So we'll drill these in, attach these into the side of the enclosures, and then we'll drill out these holes, and then we'll move on to the next part. What I'll be doing is I've got to, like I said in the intro, just pre-drill some holes down the sides of these enclosures along the back, and just put some more timber screws through them just to make it sturdier. I've also got some silicone here. It's just this stuff here. It's water resistant, waterproof, UV proof, all the rest of it. It is animal friendly, and we just need to seal up on the inside of the enclosures. But what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna drill these holes out first, fix the lights in, turn the lights on, and then I'll actually be able to see what I'm doing properly, and yeah, we'll go from there. So one step at a time. What I'm gonna do first is I've already got the drill set up to set these up and put these into place. So I'm gonna do that now, and then we'll go ahead and drill out these holes on the top, and yeah, we'll get on with it. So stick around. Back. I've got the silicone and stuff ready to go. We're just going to do, like I said, basically seal up the bottom, seal up the sides. I don't need to do the roof, as the water will be coming sort of from a small sort of hole in the roof and just shooting directly down. So I'm not worried about that timber up there or anything potentially getting any small bits of moisture up in it or any sort of direct kind of water, because it won't. Quick couple of things before you get started on this sort of stuff. This stuff is a nightmare once you get it on your hands and you let it dry. So what I like to do is I'll sort of show you how I do it, and then basically what I do to push it into the cracks and that sort of stuff. But get yourself, if you choose to do something like this, get yourself a wet rag and clean it off your fingers straight away, clean it off the tip of the nozzle straight away, that sort of stuff. Because like I said, this stuff is a nightmare to get off your hands once it dries and once it really bonds to you. So second you do it, clean yourself up, get stuck straight into it. As you probably see behind me, the lights are on, the lights are in. So these guys, like I said to you before, it's all connected on this system called Grid Connect. It's a very simple app, as you can see from here. I can control all my lights from here. I've got a number of lights that I use for the reptiles and that sort of stuff, but these two you can see from the top here. You can change the names of them so you know which one's which. I don't know if you can sort of see it from there, but you can change the color of the light. That's adjusting this one here. I like to keep it sort of a bit more on the warmer side. It simulates kind of sunlight and that sort of stuff. So you also can change the color. One thing I like to do, and one thing I'd like to try more of in future, is trying to simulate sort of like a moonlight. So you can turn that light right down, and when all the lights are off in this room, that kind of stands out really good. It looks really good. But just back to where it is now. So we'll just leave it on that for now whilst I'm going to seal up these edges. So you can stay with me with that. I'll throw that on the time lapse as well because that could take a little while, and then I'll show you what I've done after that. So I've done all the front, the sides, the backs, the edges, all that sort of stuff. A quick tip with this sort of stuff, when I apply it and I put it into the corners, once I've run that bead, I just use my finger, and between the corner, it's kind of hard to explain, but between the corner where the wood meets, when you run your finger perfectly in that corner, just using the natural grooves of your finger and that sort of stuff, you can create a nice even spread of it, and once you run it down into that crack there, it's a nice clean finish. It looks good, it's tidy, and any of the excess you can just take off and wipe with your finger. You can probably see from the video that the back wall here of the enclosure is split into two. Now whilst I was trying to seal up the corners and that sort of stuff, these back walls are either going to have a 3D background or a printed image over the back. They're not going to have any direct thing to water, any sort of direct exposure to water. I'm not worried about them expanding or being damaged from the water or any of that sort of stuff. So the only thing that's left to do now, which I'll do off camera, is just put the vents into the bottoms and the sides. Just got to install them quickly, and I have to move these racks forward and bring these enclosures out and just drill them out like I said I would, and put the supporting screws in just to make it a lot more sturdy. So I'll do that now, and then as you would have seen from the other time lapse of me putting the bases on the branches that are going to go in here, a little bit later when it cools down, I might go and get some of them branches, bring them in and just test fit them and see how they look and see if I like what I'm doing with that, or you never know, I might change my mind. So it's good to just get it done anyway, and then put it in here and see if you like it, and match up the sizes. Some might be a bit big, so I might have to trim them down. Some might be a bit small, so I might have to go and find new branches. So I'll get stuck into that a little bit later. And yeah, in the next clip you'll see the next enclosures up on top, and I'll probably be doing the exact same thing that I've done here to them. So stay tuned for that. Well, it's all done, guys. I've got the two enclosures in on setup. I didn't quite do a time lapse or anything like that of it. You've seen it all before, the ones down below, so I didn't feel like I needed to do it again, but I've installed the lights. We've got the enclosures in. You probably see behind me, this one has glass, this one does not. I smashed the glass for that one, so I need to replace that. But that's not a big deal. We can get that cut up and installed, no dramas. The only thing left to do, which I'll do off camera, you just don't have to see it again, is I'll just do the silicone in the corners and that sort of stuff, and probably put some screws in it to tighten it up. Have had a little bit of dramas with the enclosures. They're not completely square from what it seems. There's lots of gaps in the glasses, like the enclosures have got a bit of side to side sway, so I'll have to suss that out and fix that up before any sort of animals go into it or anything like that. But for the most part, they're in. I've got some of the mesh cages here ready to go to be installed, so I'll look at getting stuck into that in the not too distant future. And yeah, so like I said, I would have liked to have had the racks filled with the enclosures, to finish off this episode, but money, life, all the rest of it. Anyone that's built a reptile room or is into reptiles would know how expensive this stuff is. So it's not cheap. I've just got to do it bit by bit, and hopefully with the next episode, which will be unfortunately a few weeks away, but with the next episode there should be a fair few more enclosures. We might even try and get one of these racks completely filled up, so that way there's a fair bit of content that we can sort of film between building, backgrounds, the rest of it, what I plan to do, what's going to go into them, and all the rest. So stick around for that. It is a bit slow going, but like I said, it's a money thing, and it's a time thing as well, and it's not cheap. It takes time, but there's a lot of effort that goes behind the whole recording it, editing it, and trying to put it together so it doesn't look completely stupid. But anyway, stick around for that, and yeah, we'll keep at it. By the end of the next episode, the plan is truly to have both, if at the minimum, one of these racks completely loaded up, and we'll be well and truly on our way. Once they're done, we'll start doing the backgrounds for these enclosures. That'll be exciting, and you'll get a bit of an idea of how I do that and how we can be creative with that. And yeah, it's something a bit different other than just constantly putting these enclosures in. We'll start to spice it up by doing some backgrounds and whatnot. So we've got to fix this glass situation, fix these enclosures, get them all leveled up. And I've put the wood in there just for the show, just for this episode, but that's not how it's going to be full time. And just give you an idea what it's going to look like. As you can see, I've cut a few pieces a bit short. Probably should have measured it before I cut it, but anyway, I can replace that, go and find some more and do it all again. So it's no big deal to me. Stick around, and like I said, hopefully this episode was a little bit more informative in terms of how we get these enclosures set up and stacked and right to take the weight of more enclosures on top. And yeah, it'll only get better from here. So again, stick around and stay tuned for the next one, and I'll see you there.